what the city is talking about, the news that impacts you. Welcome to the Montreal Now podcast with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
Welcome to another edition of The Week That Was here on the iHeartRadio Network. I'm Aaron Rand along with Natasha Hall, and this week we'll look at these stories. Cold plunge baths are all the rage right now, at least on social media. We'll investigate.
I asked for advice this week because my daughter wants to have a co-ed sleepover party for her 11th birthday. Now listen, I like to think I'm a pretty cool mom, but I was feeling very uncertain about it, and it turns out people had a whole lot to say about whether or not a co-ed sleepover is cool at this age or any age for that matter.
ChatGPT. Those words alone are beginning to instill fear into educators everywhere, and smiles for perhaps students. Tech expert CARMI LEVY will explain.
But we begin with this. With the price of things these days, especially food, we know people are struggling to make ends meet. But you might not have thought that school meal programs are having similar problems. We caught up with KARINA GOULD, the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development of Canada, to find out what's happening with that and has the situation with passports improved.
Minister of Families, Children and Social Development Canada, KARINA GOULD, is with us today. Couple of issues here that we want to get into. One of them, Natasha, you brought this up during the meeting we had today, and I hadn't heard a whole lot about it. School meal programs now starting to struggle to meet the growing needs of students.
Well, I mean, think about it. It's a tough time for families to make ends meet, and as such, school meal programs are just more in demand than they've ever been, and so they, in turn, are having a hard time making ends meet. So the minister has come to Montreal today, meeting with different organizations that are working on those school programs and sustainable development. So thank you, Minister Gould, for your time today. We appreciate it very much.
My pleasure. I'm glad to be here.
So what is the situation right now when it comes to food insecurity? What have you been hearing from those organizations?
Yeah, well, I mean, like families and folks across the country, including here in Montreal, I mean, people are struggling with the high cost of living. And so for families who are, struggling to put healthy food on the table, the same can be said for school meal programs. And I would say that, Canada is the only OECD country that actually doesn't have a national school food policy or program right now. And so we're hearing a big demand from providers of school food to do more and to step up and to make sure that children across this country, no matter where they are and what their background are, can have access to healthy and nutritious food.
As you say that, Minister, I can't help but think, I don't think we ever thought living in this country that we would hear a story like this actually happening in Canada. And I realize you can't obviously plan for something like COVID, but is this now systemic? And if it is, how long is it expected to go on for? And what's the long-term plan here?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's actually something that's been going on not just because of inflation, but also pre-COVID. In Canada, about 1 in 5 children go to school hungry. This is something that, advocates have been calling for a very long time, but it's been exacerbated by the pandemic, by inflation, by supply chain issues. And so, as a government, we've taken a number of steps. We indexed the Canada Child Benefit to inflation. We doubled the GST credit rebate for 6 months. We brought in dental care for children under the age of 12 and a rental subsidy for low-income renters. But at the same time, we still understand that, there is a high cost of living. And so, even before the pandemic, we had been talking about bringing forward a national school food policy. And I launched consultations last fall. And so we're kind of wrapping up hearing from stakeholders, from children, from teachers, from provinces and territories about what a next step could potentially look like in Canada.
So with this national school food program, and as you said, you've been hearing from different people, so you have a good sense of what's happening coast to coast. Can I ask how the situation in Montreal or Quebec compares to other provinces?
Well, I would say it's pretty similar across the country. I mean, the cost of food has increased, and so organizations are having to dip into emergency funds and additional resources. They're trying to raise more money from the community at a time earlier than they normally would. So you would normally see organizations kind of put out emergency appeals later on in the school year as opposed to, at the beginning of the calendar year. And so we really are seeing this right across the country. And, I think it's something that is typically, within the provincial and territorial jurisdiction. But I think as we saw with the really successful bilateral agreements that we signed on childcare, that there can be a role for the federal government to play too.
Is the idea here that the face of hunger, if you will, has kind of changed? Like, I think we used to associate a certain socioeconomic group with those who were going without meals. That picture has drastically changed, has it not?
I think there are more people today who are working, who are unable to afford to put a meal on the table every day. I think what we're seeing in terms of food bank usage is more people who have full-time jobs. Often what we're actually seeing in the data is less so families, but more single people of working age. We effectively in Canada now have, a basic income for children. We have one for seniors through the Canada Child Benefit and through Old Age Security and Guaranteed Income Supplement. But life is getting more expensive. And so we are seeing people who, have said previously they were donors to food banks, now needing to use them themselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's been a radical change. I want to shift, if we can, while we have you, and we do appreciate your time, Minister. There was a lot made, of course, over the summer. Montreal, I don't want to say Montreal was ground zero. I'm sure there were other places as well, but there were some pretty bad situations at passport offices here. People doing whatever they could, and we took plenty of calls when we were asking people about it as well. What is the situation now as far as passports are concerned, wait times are concerned? Where have we reached?
Yeah, so I'm actually calling in right now from the Laval passport office. I'm here kind of checking things out and seeing how things are going on the ground. And in fairness, Montreal kind of was ground zero. It was definitely the most challenging place around the country. There were lines and waits elsewhere, but the situation was quite extraordinary in Montreal at the end of June and beginning of July. But I'm, I'm obviously still completely, in the position that was totally unacceptable what happened last summer with regards to passport processing. But I'm actually very pleased to be able to say that we've returned to normal. Whether you're at Guy Favreau, Laval, Saint-Laurent, in Montreal applying for a passport or anywhere else around the country, we're at almost like 98, 99% of passports if you apply in person being processed within 10 days and within 20 days if you apply by mail. We have hired, 1,200 additional staff since the height of the crisis. We're much more productive. We've streamlined a lot of processes, and we're really back to normal. So, if people have passports that are expiring, it's an important thing to do to make sure you're applying, but we're in a really good place right now when it comes to passports.
Was this, as you described, the situation being back to close to normal right now, was this simply all about just being understaffed at that point, or was there that many more requests for passports that just overwhelmed the system?
Well, the system was quite overwhelmed, and it was a bit of both. I mean, in a sense, we were understaffed because throughout the pandemic, we received far fewer applications. And then once travel restrictions were lifted in the early spring of last year, we received a huge amount of applications, kind of all at once, which created the backlog that we then had to get through over the summer and into the fall. But we are staffed up. We are operating at top clip, higher than we were pre-pandemic, for example. So we're in a really good place, and we have some new tools, in terms of monitoring what the forecasted volume is. Now, they're never perfect because you can't always predict when and how people are going to make their passport applications, but I feel very confident that we're in a much better position than we were, 6-7 months ago.
Minister Gould, given that federal employees are mandated to begin heading back to the office today, that's phasing in gradually through the end of March, but 2 to 3 days per week, do you think that'll help the situation even more with the passports, or could it potentially be a little blip as there's a readjustment as people go back to the office? Well,
I would say that for Passports and Service Canada, those folks have been in the office the whole time. they weren't working from home because those are front-facing, client-serving services. And so certainly when we reopened offices to full capacity later in the late spring and May and June of last year, that helped because when we had reduced capacity, that limited our ability to serve the number of clients. But we've been fully in the office, the whole time. And so I don't think today's change will have much of an impact because those that were working in Service Canada and Passports have been in their offices the whole time.
So I would simply ask you to repeat for people who perhaps, didn't hear it. With respect to passports and applying, we are now in a situation where you should not have to worry if you have travel coming up and you need a passport. What's the time frame?
Yeah, so if you apply in person at a passport office, so that is in the Montreal area, that's at Laval, at Guy Favreau, or Saint Laurent. It's 10 days in person. Of course, if you have to travel before then, you can always get a rush service or an urgent service as well. And then if you're applying at a Service Canada centre or by mail, it's 20 business days.
Okay.
And if for whatever reason you don't get something within that time frame, call the passport line. Again, that's been staffed up. Wait times are much reduced, and we can always make sure that we figure out what's going on. Sometimes it's because, a photo wasn't signed or documents weren't submitted correctly, and we can quickly get that sorted out and make sure people get their passport ahead of travel.
All right. I thought you were going to say right at the end there, if there's a problem, any problem at all, just call me directly. I am the minister, but no, don't call the minister directly.
You're a little busy.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Okay. KARINA Gould, Minister of Families, Children and Social Development Canada, thanks so much for your time today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Informative, interactive, and always interesting. This is Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
Cold plunge baths are all the rage right now, at least on social media. We'll investigate. Dr. Joe Schwartz is host of the Dr. Joe Show, which airs Sundays at 3 here on CJAD. He's also director of the McGill Office for Science and Society. And Dr. Joe, I thought we'd start by this thing that I've been seeing more and more of. Look, I don't think it's entirely new. It seems to me, athletically, some athletes, football players, etc., after hard practices, they end up in this gigantic, metal tub filled with ice, and it was supposed to be really good. Now it seems to be spreading as something that any and all of us can do and get health benefits from. So weigh in on this. What do you think of it?
Well, I've been following this since the year 2000, actually, when I started to look into Wim Hof, who's known as the Iceman. He's a Dutch guy. And the reason I started following him in 2000 because I like to browse through the Guinness Book of Records, and I found him there. He had just set a record for swimming under the ice. Now that's kind of impressive, you cut a hole in the ice in a lake, and you go in and swim to another hole underneath the ice. And he set a record for that. And then I started looking into some of the other things he did. He climbed way up Mount Everest, although not quite to the top, in nothing but shorts. He climbed up to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa in nothing but shorts. He set records in sitting in ice water, lying spread eagle on snow for more than an hour. Pretty amazing. And what really got me interested in him is that he did subject himself to scientific investigation, and he was examined by doctors in a hospital, which is pretty interesting. Now, he claims that there's a certain method in order to be able to accomplish the kind of things that he does. It all starts with a method of breathing, whereby for 30 times you inhale deeply and let out the breath, and then you hold your breath after the 30th time for as long as you can, and then you repeat this again twice more. And basically, it's a way of hyperventilating, and you do get sensations. I mean, you get tingling in the hands and whatever. But what they discovered was that this allowed him to actually control what we call the autonomic nervous system, which normally just kicks in by itself. you don't really have control over it. I mean, you know that if something bad happens, you're out on the street and someone sticks a gun in your back, your heart rate goes up tremendously, right? Mm-hmm. But if you're just sitting in your chair, you can't will your heart rate to go up. But he seems to be able to do things like that. And the experiment that really was noteworthy, when they injected him with a bacterial toxin that normally causes chills and fever and nausea, and nothing like that happened to him. He did his inhaling method. They injected him with the toxin, and absolutely nothing happened. And they monitored his blood chemistry, and they found that the markers of immunity all improved, and he somehow seems to be able to control his inner chemistry. Now, this is kind of sounds hokey, but then he was able to teach 12 other people to do the same. And they also were subjected to these experiments in the hospital, and they also showed that their body chemistry could be controlled somehow by just willing it. I don't really know what to make of this, mm-hmm. because I spend my life, most of my life anyway, battling nonsense and trying to debunk the quacks and saying, well, where's the evidence? But this guy has the evidence. I mean,
okay.
There are videos of him climbing Mount Everest, almost naked, sitting in ice water for an hour. I mean, unbelievable.
Well, but
thing.
So what would you expect to happen then in a situation like that? How would your body be expected to react?
Oh, I think you'd expect hypothermia. You'd expect your body temperature to drop below 37 degrees, which would be, catastrophic. It doesn't seem to happen to him or to his disciples. Now, that's not to say that there haven't been some accidents. I think there have been a few of people, trying to duplicate his efforts, but mostly not. And what is also interesting and has kind of impressed me is that there were two journalists who set out really to debunk him. They had called him a charlatan and all of this, and they were converted by him. And they started to practice this Van Hoff method, as it is called, and they claim that they feel better after. Apparently, you start, well, of course, you always start with this breathing method, which I think anyone can learn. And then he tells you to start with taking a 15-second cold water shower in the morning, then trying to extend it to 30 seconds and 45 seconds, etc., and that it just revs up your body, which I can understand. I mean, it certainly will increase your output of adrenaline. But he says that it invigorates you and boosts your immunity and all of this. Now, I must say I've listened to, him talk, and he's got a TED Talk that anyone can find on YouTube. And really much of the language sounds kind of hokey, that, you can basically beat anything by following his system. He's even got one guy who talks about beating cancer with this. So I think that's a bit over the top. But the fact is that he has demonstrated that he can do these incredible things. So the evidence is there. I mean, he's run half a marathon. Half a marathon is quite a distance. I mean, that's 13 miles. He's run it barefoot on the snow above the Arctic Circle.
I mean, this guy's obviously some kind of freak. I mean, I understand he's conditioned his body, but I don't think the average
but he's
person...
got, as Joe said, he's got other people to do the same thing, and it's been okay.
That's the impressive thing. I mean, now he's got a network around the world of Hoff instructors. So there are dozens and dozens and dozens of people who can do this, who can sit in ice water for extended periods of time. It's very hard to understand.
Okay, but let me ask you this, because I started the question when we first came on by saying the average person out there, because I'm starting to see there are people now selling these tubs for to sit in a cold plunge or an ice bath. If you wanted to do this just to kind of wake up, you mentioned that shower in the morning with ice cold water, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, is there anything wrong with doing that?
I don't think so. Okay. I think that plunging, without any preparation, without having, even explored his breathing techniques, plunging into, a lake of ice water. No, that would not be the thing to do, and he doesn't even suggest that you do that. You get into it by first learning this breathing technique, and then slowly getting into the cold water.
Okay.
No, thank you.
I don't know if I'd be willing to try it, to tell you the
neither.
truth. I'm not a big fan of the cold. But he's not a charlatan. I think, some of his language is a bit off, but the evidence is there that he can do these, what to me seem unbelievable things.
Yeah, now I will point out, by the way, that originally the idea of sitting in that bath is from muscle soreness. If you'd worked out and you got sore, the idea of sitting in an ice bath was to kind of calm that down. I imagine that's still okay.
Yes, but he's gone, of course, way further
over
than
the
that.
top, right.
I mean, anyone who's really interested in this, there's an excellent video on YouTube made by Vice, V-I-C-E. That's the magazine. Mm-hmm. And it's about a 35-minute video. And it's really amazing because it documents everything that he's done. And, it's not hearsay.
Okay.
You see him doing it. You see him doing these incredible things.
All right, Joe, we got to wrap up because we're out of time, but there you go. If you want to go check out the video.
Are you guys going to take that cold shower tomorrow morning?
I think I might try. I've done the cold plunge before. It's incredibly invigorating, typically after a sauna or something. But yeah, I'm just watching people do this, and it looks kind of interesting. Maybe even just do it once and never do it again.
Well, take a look at the video, the Vice video about the Iceman.
The Iceman.
Thanks,
Joe, thank you so much.
Okay.
Dr. Joe Schwartz, he's on Sundays at 3 here on CJAD, the Iceman.
This is Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall, CJAD 800.
Hey, it's Natasha. Just wanted to take a quick moment to thank you for subscribing to the Montreal Now podcast. If you like what you're hearing, you may also enjoy the Andrew Carter podcast and the Big Five podcast. Subscribe today on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Asking questions, looking for answers. Here's more of Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
I asked for advice this week because my daughter wants to have a co-ed sleepover party for her 11th birthday. Now listen, I like to think I'm a pretty cool mom, but I was feeling very uncertain about it, and it turns out people had a whole lot to say about whether or not a co-ed sleepover is cool at this age or any age for that matter.
Welcome to the advice portion of our show for today. Our first question is going to help Natasha decide what to do with her 10-year-old daughter who would like to have a sleepover party, but involving boys, 10 and 11-year-old boys, friends from school.
Yeah, only 2 of the kids are boys. So it's her 11th birthday coming up. She's had to have very scaled back celebrations for the last 2 years, as in 1 or 2 friends. So this time she wants 8 kids. 2 of them happen to be boys. I'm like, okay, no problem. And then she's like, but I want a sleepover. I was like, oh, hang on a second here. I don't know how I feel about that. They're all 10 and 11-year-olds, and as my mom pointed out, the thing is, with 10 and 11-year-olds, they're maturing at different times, right? So they're at different phases, different stages. So while she might still be very much a little girl, and I do know the 2 boys, and I think they would be okay, but somehow I'm still uncomfortable with the notion of it. So I'm asking you for some advice. Would you be cool with a co-ed sleepover for 10 and 11-year-olds? Do you think I'm making a big deal of something that isn't a big deal at all?
And to your mom's point, because you asked, you checked with her first, and she said she would not do this.
Yeah, she said no. She was like, yeah, I don't think so.
So we've heard from 2 women before the break. Let's go to a gentleman on the line. This is Jerry. Jerry, what would you do here?
No, let's be realistic. Guys are guys. She may be innocent. Guys are not.
Wow, even at that age?
Pretty risky condemnation there of every 10 and 11-year-old boy. Okay.
Aaron, I'm around your age, and we learn things from magazines. Now they have too much accessibility to things. Just because they're 11 in age doesn't make them 11 in age.
Well, that's a fair point. We didn't have, internet or any of that kind of stuff when we were that little. We had whatever magazines we could, hide under the bed. Jerry, thank you, and good luck in the tunnel you're calling us from. So.
I have to tell you, that's literally the same thing that Dave said. Dave was like, but boys are
more
boys. Yeah.
Okay. Wayne, how about you? What's your take on this? What would you do?
Hi, Aaron. It's your buddy Wayne from the gym.
Hey, Wayne from the gym. Good. How are you?
Good. I have 3 daughters, and what I suggest that if Natasha does decide to do it, that she needs full disclosure. She needs to tell those other parents.
Oh, for sure.
Just because it hits her moral compass doesn't mean it's okay with them. So that's super important. And
right.
What's she going to do next year? Is she going to tell them that they can't stay over? Like, once she opens that box, you can't say, well, your friend was your friend this year, but next year when you want to have a sleepover or the year after that, now the boys can't come. So that part, it makes it a little bit difficult.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, right?
Wayne, I'm with you on 100%. I would have to fully disclose the situation to the other parents.
To Wayne's point, by the way, what would you tell your daughter about, it was, couldn't do it last year, but we can do it, or vice versa, we could do it this year, but no?
I feel like I could handle that by saying you're maturing and it's become inappropriate. Like as you're entering puberty and kids are, entering different phases, I feel like it's no longer appropriate.
Wayne,
small world,
it's nice hearing from you, pal. Take good care of yourself.
All right, take care.
You too. All right, Galina is on the line. Galina, what about you? What's your suggestion here?
Yes, hi guys. Natasha, I have a question for you. What is your biggest fear from that? Is this the moral part of it and the conservative part of it, or it's actually fear that they might have sex or do something inappropriate?
Oh my God, no. I would be there the whole time. There would be adult supervision the entire time. So that is not a fear of mine. My fear, I think, is just about the appropriateness of it. Is it okay to have kids of that age sleep, in the same room, and could it be awkward? What kind of situations could present themselves? But I would be there. There would be parental supervision from Dave and I the entire time.
Well, that's it. I think in the same room sleeping, no, for sure not. Girls will be sleeping in one room and boys can sleep in another room. But sleepover, I think we shouldn't discredit boys, because now the relationship between kids, I think it's different. It's not like we used to grow up, you know?
Right.
So I think that it's more friendly stuff, and I think it could. I don't know. I would trust that if I have to raise my daughter these days, I would ask her and I would trust her. And I would allow that, especially when it's 10, 11 years old.
I love what you're saying. You're so right that it's changed. Like the divide between boys and girls isn't the same that it used to be. No, it isn't. It really, and certainly at Simone's age, she doesn't yes, she's aware that friend is a boy. Let me also say, they're aware who's non-binary, who says that they're gay, and that's all part of the conversation as well too. But all of that to say that they have friends. Friends are friends, and gender doesn't play the same big role that it used to.
Let me ask a dumb question as someone who's not the parent of a small, thank God I'm not, I don't know how I get through this. If there's parental supervision the entire time, doesn't that sort of take any issue off the table anyway? You're there the whole time. Nothing could happen. It's
still just about the appropriateness of it, right? Is it appropriate for kids of that age, given that they could very well be at different phases?
But if you were there and nothing happened, wouldn't that kind of be like a green light saying, look, we can do this and nothing inappropriate happened, and you'd feel better after that?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I'm just asking. I couldn't deal with this. Let me go up here. This is Louise on the line. Louise, what's your take on all this?
Hi, guys.
Hey.
Okay, I agree with Wayne, but to go one step further, Natasha, are you ready to tell your daughter that Susie won't be coming because Susie's mommy doesn't want boys here?
Right, meaning so we put the invitations out and then the invitations are declined because other parents are not comfortable with it. I think that's a very fair question, and it does set my daughter up for disappointment, right? Because she's just assuming that the invitations go out and everybody says yes. But I think you raise a really good point, which as other texters have, and Wayne did, that, other parents might not be okay with it, even if we are. Of
course, you could ask first and know who is going to be okay with it, and then decide after that perhaps who to invite and who not to invite. Well, I don't know if that solves the problem. I'm just making it worse. Louise, thank you for the call. Keith, what would you do here? What's your suggestion?
Hi, just as a parent of a teenager now, but we had plenty of parties when she was younger, and they were extended. If it was outside of the house, we had the house parties with the pool in the backyard. And then, given the right time, it's like, okay, parents come pick up your kids. And when there was a sleepover tied to a birthday, it was just the girls, because you didn't want any awkward moments. I'm not, thinking anything out of the normal would happen, but boys, they're curious. And trust me, working in a school, I hear enough conversations, be it from elementary school boys, forget about high school, but I've had, dealings with elementary school boys. And there's a lot of questions that come up. And just to remove that completely. It would just be at a given time, be it 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, parents come and collect your kids.
Okay.
I think that's great advice. I mean, you have a very unique perspective as someone who works in a school, but also as a parent. So do you think, I'm saying, am I making it weird because these issues don't exist for my kid yet? Or am I maybe even being a bit naive, Keith, because those issues may very well exist?
The saying I grew up with was better to be safe than sorry.
Yeah.
I work in a high school, and recently I've had contact with some, elementary school boards. And I'm not trying to say they speak for all, but it just reminded me that we need to always be thinking, what is the safest avenue to take? What is the safest approach to take? Because heaven forbid, you're not expecting anything to happen. Both of you are going to be there to supervise, but something were to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, then
now it's on my watch.
Right.
Yeah.
You're kind of deemed as, it was that house or those parents.
Wow, that's another great point. This is so good.
Thank you, Keith. Great calls,
Thank
everybody.
you so much. We can take one more here, I think, and squeeze one in before we have to take our break. Go up here to Dina. Dina, we've heard some really interesting advice here. What's yours?
I am a teacher at an elementary school.
Ooh.
I have taught 10 and 11-year-olds.
Okay.
I am not a parent.
Okay.
However, I don't think that it's inappropriate because it's kind of like saying boys cannot be friends with girls and girls cannot be friends with boys.
Yeah.
I don't think, and however, that being said, because I am a teacher and I have seen and heard so many different things, I would be, you said that you would be present when they are sleeping. You said that your husband would be present when they were sleeping. They could all sleep in the same room. It's, there is a sense of, yes, children do mature at different times of in their lives, at different ages, but I don't think it's inappropriate. I think, on the contrary, I think it's good to show that children of different sexes can be friends. I think that's fine. Having a sleepover, I would do it if I were a parent. I would allow it.
Okay.
Great call again, Dina.
Yeah,
Great call.
Thank you all. This was great. We didn't even get to our texts. There's some really good ones in here as well.
So many good texts we didn't get to, and some callers we didn't get to.
When are you going to make a decision, by the way?
I got to make it pretty darn soon. There will be some more conversations in my household over the next couple of days.
You have to follow up and tell us what you ultimately did decide to do.
I will, for sure.
The stories in the news that are worth your time. Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
ChatGPT. Those words alone are beginning to instill fear into educators everywhere, and smiles for perhaps students. Tech expert CARMI Levy will explain. We talk tech and business in the world of tech as well. CARMI Levy joins us. He is CTV's tech analyst. And CARMI, it's been hard to avoid the term chatbot or ChatGPT these past couple of weeks. I think a lot of people have heard it, read about it, don't really know what it's all about. So can you fill us in?
Yeah, the simplest way to describe something like ChatGPT is that it's the next generation of search. When you go to Google and you type in some search terms, it spits back a bunch of links. That's pretty much the extent of Google. What chatbots do, they're powered by artificial intelligence. They do a lot more. You can ask them actual questions, and they will answer you in fully formed responses. You can even ask them to write things or create something from scratch, and based on artificial intelligence, they've been scouring the internet for data to kind of become sentient, become knowledgeable. They can actually write context for you. They can write prose. They can write poetry. They can code if you're a software developer. They can compose songs. They can do all sorts of crazy things way beyond just spitting back a list of links. And of course, as you can imagine, Google kind of frightened because this could affect its search business. It's basically the next generation of search, and Google doesn't really have an answer for it just yet. They say they do, but not quite. And everyone is trying this. You can go to the website and you can actually access it if it's available. It's been kind of overloaded the last few weeks, but you can play with it and kind of roll up your sleeves and figure out ways to take advantage of it. It's basically artificial intelligence, which used to be limited to scientists, researchers, people with lots of money, access to huge mainframes. They've basically figured out a way to make it available to you and me, and a lot of people are pretty excited about it.
Yeah, and a lot of people are not very excited about it, right?
I'm thinking that the school sector, educators must be terrified about what this means, because, the potential for cheating is huge here.
There's no question. And, if you look to New York, for example, public schools there have already banned it. Seattle has done the same thing. I know school boards across Canada and the U.S. are looking at it and considering what to do next. It's kind of terrifying if you're an educator. And disclosure, my wife is an elementary school teacher, so these are conversations we're having at the dinner table as well. What do you do if the way that you've been teaching for decades is now under threat because kids now no longer have to learn how to write, let's say. They can just go to this tool and it'll do it for them and they can bring it back and no one will be the wiser. It's terrifying. But what we're seeing also is higher education. So, for example, universities, colleges in Canada and the U.S., they're starting to look at their curriculum and they're going, well, maybe if traditional teaching doesn't work in the age of chatbots, maybe we should change traditional teaching. Maybe we can, instead of banning ChatGPT, let's incorporate it into the classroom. Let's, for example, tell the students to go use it, and then maybe we'll sit and critique how it responds, the results of it. And so I think that's the thing. I think this is like we've had these arguments before when calculators were first introduced into classrooms. There was a huge debate over whether they should be allowed because, well, you're not going to have to do long division anymore. And then the same thing with laptops and the same thing with smartphones. And every single time a generationally new technology comes along, everyone argues, there are bans, and then we figure out how to update the way we operate and we move forward. And I think the same thing's going to happen here. Old types of teaching, rote, memorization, spitting it back, I think that's probably going to fade away at some point. But, with these tools in the pockets of teachers and students, I think it opens up the doors to new ways of teaching and learning. But let's be clear, between now and when that actually happens, there's going to be a lot of pain and a lot of raging debate going on before we kind of get there.
I thought it was really interesting as, educators have to worry about this kind of stuff. Kid turns in a paper, turns out it was written by a chatbot. There are already, did I read this right? There's already a program now that can identify something if it's been written by a chatbot, another piece of software?
Yeah, there are developers who on weekends and evenings have been developing their own tools, also available on the web, that allow you to be able to tell whether something was created by a chatbot. In fact, the service, if you're in college or CJAD or university, you know this. I know it well. It's called Turnitin, and a lot of institutions, including those in Montreal and across Quebec, use these tools. They'll take a paper and they'll run it through that service to check for plagiarism, to check for citations that weren't cited, things like that. And so Turnitin has said they're going to be incorporating these tools into its platform as well. So they're going to be able to check for, well, did you just punch it into a chatbot and it spat it back? If you did, then guess what? You're failing. So we will figure out new technologies to sort of find the cheaters, but I think smart educators, both teachers as well as administrators and school boards and parents who are members of these school boards, they're already looking beyond that going, let's not think the sky is falling here because it isn't. We have a pretty golden opportunity to revamp the way kids learn, and I think that's pretty cool.
Just before we move on, asking for a friend, let's say you put something into ChatGPT, ask it to write you whatever, something based on what your input was. I know it spits it out and you can read it. How do you get that to be voiced? Is there a way?
Yeah, in fact, there was a service just released. Some very smart developer consolidated it with Siri. So, in fact, Siri can actually read the results of ChatGPT, or you can use a voice-to-text service to take the text that you've pulled out of ChatGPT and have somebody read it. And it's probably only a matter of time before the good folks at OpenAI, they're the ones who bring us ChatGPT, that they incorporate it right into the tool. So at some point, if you're Google Assistant, Apple, Siri, you're probably looking at this going, we may be in trouble. I think we're going to have to get our engineers to work on a solution.
I got to just say, I hate the idea for poor teachers having one more thing on their to-do list. So now they have to run assignments through to make sure that they're not being done by bots.
Yeah, and this is where school boards can really come in handy because they can provide the tools to the teachers, and make it so that they don't have to spend additional hours running through these tools. They can just incorporate it right into the curriculum. There are better ways to do this. We're still early days in the technology. We still haven't figured it out yet. We are sort of in the process of learning. We'll get better at it, but really I'm looking to the boards themselves to say, these are the resources we're going to give to you to A, make life easier on you, B, help you be better educators without burning you out in the process.
Before we run out of time, I'm kind of fascinated by the next topic. So if you're fed up with facial recognition cameras, and we know they're everywhere, monitoring your every move, what does Italian fashion have to do with this? What have they figured out?
So it's called Capable, CAP_ABLE. And what they'll do is they will make hoodies, pants, T-shirts, dresses, and they print something called an adversarial patch, and it has animals on it. So it could be a giraffe, a zebra, a dog, or any other kind of animal. And that animal is designed to fool the facial recognition. So instead of looking like Aaron Rand or Natasha Hall, it will be a zebra. That's what the facial rec will spit back.
That's wild.
And of course, yeah, exactly. They're just messing with the code, and I think it's brilliant. The problem is it's still boutique stuff, right? It's $300 and up, but they're promising that they're looking for funding, they're looking for investors so they can scale up, so that eventually you and I can afford it. Because I'm totally on Team Zebra. I will buy the hoodie if it's available.
I'm looking at them. They look pretty cool, I got to say. So
you could be the whole zoo. I'd be good with that. All right. CARMI, thank you so much. Good talking to you.
Thanks, guys.
CARMI Levy, CTV Tech Analyst. That wraps up another edition of The Week That Was here on the iHeartRadio Network. I'm Aaron Rand along with Natasha Hall, and we will see you next week.
Have a great week.
This has been the Montreal Now podcast with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall. Listen live on your radio weekday afternoons from 2 to 6 on CJAD 800 or through the iHeartRadio app.